Come down this road with me.
Good morning and welcome to the Speak Project. My name is Tank, and today we are breaking some news with Michaele Walker, and we are going to get that going right now. There has been many important things that have been transpiring this week, and Michaele has been actively working to help us bring those things out. So, Michaele, are you with us?
I am.
All right. So, yesterday was a very shocking turn of events. Do you want to warm people up, or do you want me to break it down?
Well, I haven't been to bed yet, so it's
my
been
goodness.
all night. It's been an all night
told
for
me we
me.
could have broadcast overnight.
We could have it because Intel. It's been all night. About 7:15 last night, it was reported that our past, who she had lost the election last year, Senator Linda Collins Smith, who is absolutely a champion and patriot. She was in the number 3 top conservative senators that we had. She was the most outspoken senator, her and with Brian King, another senator, and they both were taken out by the establishment, Asa Hutchinson, the Clintons, all of them. And so her body was found last night at her home, after what we are seeing on our end. She was very social, Tank, Twitter, Facebook, and everything. Her last Twitter post is on May the 27th. Her last Facebook post was May the 28th. And so nobody had heard from her. Her father and son went to the house to check on her, and found outside of the property wrapped up in a blanket tarp type thing. She had been killed, murdered from a gunshot wound. And so where this ties into is that
let's just recap just for a second. Just pause for a second. Collect exactly how you want to connect it. So, Linda Collins Smith, she is one of the former state senators for Arkansas. She was found yesterday at 7:15 p.m. in Arkansas. She was found at her home, wrapped in a tarp/blanket or a combination thereof, outside of her house, obviously shot. Clearly wasn't a suicide because no one has time to wrap themselves on a tarp after they've shot themselves, and they won't be able to cover this up. It looks as if, though, the fact that they had her wrapped in a tarp, they probably didn't get a chance to dispose of her body, which means they were disrupted in some level. So that being said, right now, we know that the last time that she tweeted or had anything on social media was May 28th, correct?
Correct. Now, what they're saying, the neighbors are saying, was they heard gunshots 2 days prior, but the body was decomposed enough and that it was taking a little, I'm trying to be as delicate as I can be and sensitive. She was not being able to be identified just as a 2-day type murder. Let's put it that way. So the body had some decomposing. It's not been hot in Arkansas for 2 days. So it makes you wonder, and speculating here, are we looking around May the 28th date, and when people weren't realizing that she was missing, Is the gunshots more of a narrative? Did the gunshots even have anything to do with Linda's death? But the reporting was the neighbors heard gunshots 2 days prior, but we're looking at last Facebook, last media thing was May the 28th.
So potentially, I mean, you're looking at decomposition that should reflect about 7 days of decomp, if around there. And you're speculating now the decomposition doesn't match that, which implies that potentially she was being held hostage and tortured, which you don't seem to want to say, but I'm just asking if that's what you mean.
They're just saying that, the state police that, the body was decomposed. Around 9:30 at that time, the state police was not wanting to confirm that it was her in a statement because of the decomposing. Our direct sources with family and stuff, is saying that the body was definitely decomposed, and that, we're looking, it will be shocking, I will put it that way, that if it's a 2-day thing. Now, Linda was a POA group member. She was a huge gun activist. Last year,
wait,
and they knocked
POA?
her out.
Just so everyone that hears this.
POA is the Patriots of Active Arkansas. It's a huge group here in Arkansas that absolutely has advocated for gun rights here. Arkansas here, the state police, Arkansas State Police, and Asa Hutchinson, and the Attorney General Leslie Rutledge and them what they do is they try to tell people that you have to have a license to carry concealed here. You do not. In the state of Arkansas, we are a constitutional state. You do not have to have a license to carry open or concealed in the state of Arkansas. Now, the reason they didn't want the citizens of Arkansas to know this is because it's a multi-million-dollar industry for the Arkansas State Police to make you think you need a license. And so the Arkansas State Police have been making a lot of money on, and we actually had caught them in recordings. So last year we had got a Supreme Court ruling because Leslie Rutledge, the Attorney General, she was saying the writing was confusing. She wouldn't give a statement either way. And they would say it depends on the prosecutor, and of course that's not law. Law is plain, this is constitutional. We knew what our rights were. And it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court came back and said that we were correct. It is absolutely a constitutional state. We do not need a license to carry. Of course, you're hitting a multi-million-dollar industry with the state. She was a number one advocate and a senator last year protecting gun rights. She was not just a person that you elected and just talked at the Capitol. She was at weekend, even after she got kicked out, she was at the Capitol. She was at weekend events and still fighting for your gun rights, fighting for things. But what happened last year is...
Well, wait, before you go on. So just to address this with anybody who hears this now or in the future, many of the police forces, even claiming to be state police forces, are actually private mercenary forces. A sure way to find out if your state police force is actually supported by the government is to ask them for proof of their oath of office. You will notice that it is very common that many organizations that claim to be government organizations are in fact not. Our police forces, believe it or not, they also fall into the same category. This goes under the section of the United Nations of the militarization of police forces around the world. Many of our police forces have been militarized, and they have essentially been funded by the United Nations or some sect of the United Nations. And it's very important to ask them for their oath of office. In their oath of office, they if they have one, they should be able to prove that they have sworn to uphold the Constitution, to protect America and the American people. So if that was the case, they would never cite a law like that because they'd be fighting to uphold the Constitution, of which Michelle is referring to. All right, go ahead.
Correct. And so, point in just what you said, last year I was sitting with a good friend of mine, and she said she was, had just sent off her 100 or whatever, I think it was $100 and something for her concealed license, and I said, why? You don't need that. And she's like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, no, you don't. And so she called the state police, and they told her she did have to have it. And so then we kind of went back and forth, and I called literally the state police. We all had a recording, and I said, can you give me the statute and penalty for not carrying with carrying concealed without a license? I need the statute and penalty. And he goes, oh, we don't give that information. And I said, you don't give it because there's not one. And
right, exactly.
And so we end up they end up refunding her because we had, Jen Morgan, who is known with Fox News, which was a good friend of Linda Collins Smith, who ran for governor last year. We caused enough stink that the state police actually refunded her money. But last year when Linda got knocked out of the election, that was definitely a played position. They needed her out of there. But last year what happened was Governor Asa Hutchinson's nephew, Senator Hutchinson, was indicted during legislation session and had to step down because of the outcry. And so when he had to step down, she was the person put in place because of her position, and she was the one put in place to be over the legislation, committees. And so the last part of our session last year, she worked so tirelessly, Tank. My God, I'm talking about, I don't think she hardly slept those last few weeks. Just she called me the night we beat issue 1, and she told me that she was so proud of me and that she hoped that Women of Arkansas didn't go anywhere, and that I had proven to be the real deal. And then she said, we've got to push these bills through while I'm still there, and I need some help. And we went to work to help her. She made sure the red flag law didn't come through here. She got some things in place to make it very clear what our gun rights were, and she was a heavy hitter against DHS, and trying her best to hold them accountable with some funds that had been missing, and she was still heavily helping us hit DHS and with what was going on in the state of Arkansas. But as a gun activist,
so she's an outspoken advocate for DHS. Explain again what this is. I keep getting DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and Department of
Child Services. How that falls into is like Department Human Services falls into like Department Child Services to CPS, Child Protective Services. So it kind of, in Arkansas, it's, Child Protective Services, CPS is under the same, of Department of Human Services type, umbrella. And
Okay.
so that's normally why you'll hear me call it CPS here in Arkansas. I just always refer to it as Child Protective Services. But you know, we have some situations with some children that there's a case, Jaden Tatum here. He was a toddler that was taken from his family 2 years ago, I believe. The father was in his home, had been drinking. He wanted someone to leave his house. The police were called, and the child was in the living room watching cartoons with the girlfriend. The child was fine, and Child Protective Services came in there, yanked Jaden out of the house, and they ended up arresting the dad, and Jaden's not been seen from his family since. And I don't know what's going on with that case, but I can tell you that when we get certain senators involved, it gets shut down, and it's been unreal. You know,
So wait,
Linda Collins
what do you
Smith
mean by shut down? What do you mean by shut down? You get certain senators involved with what?
When
you're
they hear the
advocating
story, they tell the family that they're going to help with the Jaden story. Something's not right. And like when his dad was to appear in court, when they terminated the rights, he was arrested, taken to Louisiana the Friday before court. And of course, when you have court, it doesn't matter if you're in jail, you know, they have to bring you to court, you know. They did not bring him, and they terminated the rights. And it's unreal, the shadiness that's happened with that case.
They terminated the rights?
Yes.
They terminated the rights for him to appear in court.
As a parent. They terminated his rights because he wasn't in court.
Oh my goodness! So he was in jail for what we don't even know.
In Louisiana, he was in jail in Louisiana. He was on probation, but it was nothing to do with child abuse or nothing like that. And he had already from Louisiana had met with the probation officers here in Arkansas, and was allowed here. And what they arrested him for is they said that he wasn't supposed to be here, so they took him to Louisiana. And that was not a true statement. But they got him out of here where he could not appear in court on that Monday to fight for his son. But his aunt, Cindy, was the one helped raising him. She had been the one that had, you know, and trying to get Jaden back has been they told her she was running a business, housekeeping. They told her that wasn't good enough, so she went and got a job. And then CPS literally called her boss and was harassing him where she, you know, lost her job. And they were just making sure that this family wasn't going to even get the opportunity to get this child back. And so when we would bring senators involved and we would tell them what's going on, and we were, I've even went and met with the attorneys. I mean, this has been a case that we really have tried to get some answers on. And we would have a senator, and you know who you are out there, you know, the multiple senators that we've spoke with, and they would say, we're going to help, you know, something's not going on. And then they would come back and say, hey, I don't know what's happening, but I was just told you're not going to get the kid back. And I flat out asked the attorney, flat out, I have a witness. Do you know if Jaden is alive? Have you seen proof of life? Do you know if this child is alive? And he said to me he was not sure. And the family has said that they do not know if he's alive, and sometimes they feel like that they need to be looking for a body, and we have no proof that this child was adopted out. This child is safe. It's absolutely just been a horrendous situation. And we've had a very serious situation with Child Protective Services taking and seizing children in Arkansas. We have a guy named Mike here. He spent 4 years in prison on false accusations in CPS and DHS in Arkansas, and the entire time had the evidence in their hands to clear him. He spent 4 years of his life in prison because they set him up to take his kids, and they had the evidence in their hands the entire time to clear him. He spent 4 years in prison. He's been out, and Tank, he still don't have his kids back.
So let me get this right. So Child Protective Services and DHS, Department of Human Services, which clearly is much more of a business about, buying and selling humans, it sounds like, more than anything, controlling them and manipulating them in some way. So in this, they're literally bringing false accusations against people, imprisoning them, and then taking their children on top of this. So this is really, certainly, by all means, cruel and unusual punishment, to say the very least. Let alone it's incredibly corrupt. This would definitely, you're violating clearly the human rights of the child, of the parent. This is human rights violations. There's 1,000 different laws that this is violating. How is it possible that this continues to go on?
There's not enough people out there that are outraged, or when we get someone who is speaking out, they're dead. And
so now, how does this tie back in to Linda Collins?
So how this ties back in to Linda Collins Smith is she has been a huge person on DHS. I know for a fact, there is a group of us, in Arkansas. We share our information. We're working together, and we've been working together, and we know for a fact that she had information with DHS. She had information on this, and she had information on Watergate, and where this ties into is, I need to tell you real quick that her ex-husband that she just got divorced from was a past judge here, okay? And he was a circuit judge. If you find him, it's retired circuit judge Philip Smith, Pocahontas. But just this month, February of 2019, he was reprimanded by the Judicial Discipline and Disability Commission. He agreed to the reprimand and agreed not to serve in the judiciary in the future, including by a temporary assignment. He retired at the end of 2017. Now, the reason it arose because in the divorce, she found on his computer child pornography.
So this is another circuit judge, including Nader, who was just arrested on Monday for having child pornography on his phone. This individual, the wife, Linda Collins Smith, actually identified child pornography on his computer after the divorce. And
during
so
the
she
divorce.
has been an advocate during the divorce. Okay.
She had reported. So during the divorce, that came, out, and that is absolutely. He's been reprimanded. He's agreed not to ever, judge, in a capacity. He retired in 2017, but with this Discipline and Disability Commission, he can no longer, even in a temporary type situation, serve. Now, what we found with T. Dedrick on Twitter at Breaking 911, that reports state that former Senator Linda Collins Smith had incriminating evidence against the Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton in the Whitewater scandal, but also implicating Clinton's wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And she was due to testify to a grand jury later this week.
Okay, so let's really take a second to emphasize what you just said. So you mean to tell me that Linda Collins Smith was due to testify at a grand jury against Hillary Clinton in the Watergate scandal?
Later this week, Whitewater. Mm-hmm.
Later this week. So in the long body count of the Clintons, of witnesses that try to witness against the Clintons, she has been taken out in a timely fashion, seemingly about a week before she was set to testify. Okay.
Yes, the report is that she was due to testify to a grand jury later this week. We know for a fact that she had damning evidence on the Clintons and their foundation, and that we had been working to expose the boys on the track that were murdered, 30-something years ago, that were tied into with the Manna, which ties into when the boys on the track were murdered here in Arkansas 30-something years ago. Of course, Bill Clinton was governor, and that was a drug deal. And the story was the two boys committed suicide on the track. These two boys decided to lay on the train track and let a train run over them. And they committed suicide together. And now we all know here that that is not what happened. And what happened was the boys had witnessed a drug deal going down that had Bill Clinton, the state police, and them involved. And so where that comes into all this is the DEA during that time of the district, and there was over 4,000 911 calls that came in when those boys died. No one was ever questioned, investigated. It was asked to go to a grand jury. It was refused to go to a grand jury. The district attorney during that time then got a DEA position, your drug suit, person. Do you know who that person is? He is now my governor, Asa Hutchinson.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So Governor Hutchinson, repeat that last part again. He was what was his role he played?
He was the district attorney during that time for that area, and he refused to bring anything to a grand jury, nothing. And the boys on the track, anybody that, if you want to look how deep the rabbit hole runs in Arkansas with the people that we're talking about right now, you could talk about the boys on the track, and that was currently being exposed here in Arkansas pretty heavily. And the reason that all these things are important for all of us here in Arkansas who we've really been trying to clean up our state, and the importance of this is because the people that we're dealing with is the Clintons, the people that, you know, we're all fighting out there. You don't have to be in Arkansas, but I can tell you that what we have going on in our state is a direct impact of the key players that we have on a global industry world that we're fighting. And
so why would they want to kill these boys who witnessed a drug deal? What was the
because
drug
they
deal
had witnessed, and Bill Clinton was there.
So they witnessed a drug deal involving Bill Clinton. They were killed.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the district attorney at that time, he refused to allow a grand jury to be even called to set this up, which, by the way, you don't need the district attorney's permission to call a grand jury. Just for the record, anybody out there, you have a citizen's right to call a grand jury. But but he refused to even allow that to happen. And now, kind of quid pro quo, it sounds like, that he is now the governor of Arkansas.
Yes, when he was the DEA district attorney, then he got a promotion appointed by President Bill Clinton to be the DEA. And then he became governor.
District attorney at the time. Then he was the DEA.
Mm-hmm.
He was appointed by Bill Clinton, obviously for covering his crimes.
He was the director.
So one would assume.
He was the director of the DEA.
Wow.
By President Clinton. And then he is now our governor. Now, why this could be important is the rumor is that he's eyeing to run in the Republican election against Trump.
Good luck. Yeah. Okay. All right. So he's trying to muddy the waters. Basically, is what his goal is to try to, and obviously he's been proven to be corrupt, which is in large part the reason why Bill Clinton was allowed to become the president, because they knew he was easily corruptible because they had so many crimes on him to cover up. He was an easy person to control. Okay. Got it.
So Linda Collins Smith's ex-husband is a past judicial judge, which really, what again, ties into child protective services cases, you know, juvenile type cases. Now, what is very interesting is that it was reported on Wikipedia, you know, within probably 30 minutes of it hitting the media. It had already been changed on Wikipedia. The person that changed it is from Tennessee, from C.A. Wiley, who looks like they have been a pretty big writer from Wikipedia. The incident report was at Pocahontas, Arkansas, at 4023 Highway 90 West. Linda Collins Smith is 57 years old. And like I said, she was a gun activist when she was in town. She was a caring person. You know, she had the gun with her. Shot dead by gun is what we have. The former Arkansas State Senator, the report says gunfire days before body found, and it is saying homicide on the report. Now, in our digging, like I told you, I've not been too bad because we've been pulling all of our intel together. What also is interesting, which, you know how we always say how the little person gets blamed, right?
Right.
And so when in our investigation on, I'm going to give you the exact date because we've said, and they're going to try to make this look like a burglary. They're having to say it's a homicide. I mean, immediately people in Arkansas, we say we're not falling for the Arkansas, here. And so that had to be squashed very, quickly. That was not even going to be a narrative that we would allow to come through. But what is very interesting is on March the 14th of this year, there was a verbal altercation between a guy named Byrd, B-Y-R-D, physically shoved Smith, her ex-husband, by shouldering him, ramming him with his shoulder. And the source said the bystander took Byrd down to the ground after the shove and before, so the person that shoved her ex-husband was held in on a $25,000 bond over the alleged attack. And this is from Randall County Sheriff Gary Tribble, said behind bars, held on a cash-only bond for allegedly assaulting Smith at Harp's grocery store in Pocahontas. He was still in jail as of that Monday morning. So in March, of this year, there was a little altercation. What that's about, don't know. It may not have nothing, but then you have on February 24th, 2019, he was, the judge was reprimanded. He was not going to be able to serve anymore. You have, she had her husband disbarred and removed from his seat for using the city computers to look at child pornography. So we do know that child pornography was involved. And then she had all this evidence, Tank, that what I had started, talking about, she was actively working with bringing a lot of things that we're trying to get justice for here in Arkansas. And then she was to, be testifying on a grand jury at the end of the week, and she's now no longer with us. And so, where does it stop?
So while we have you here, because I know we addressed this yesterday, and I know we, Blog Talk tried to delete the recording, but there's a couple key points that we talked about yesterday that I think bear repeating. Now, in the DHS, there is a missing $27 million, correct?
In the state of Arkansas, it's actually like 53. But what happened was, in the state of Arkansas, DHS has been missing $27 million for 2 years. So, the 2 years during that election time that she was senator, they were holding DHS accountable of where was the $27 million, or they were attempting to. And it's been a joke with them. They still have not told anybody where the money is. And it was like a laughing stock in Arkansas to a degree with among the whistleblowers, the advocates, and the talkers of, come on, guys, it's been 2 years. They can't tell you where $27 million of Arkansas taxpayers' money is. There should be an outcry here. Well,
certainly.
And so this ties into, like I said, the rabbit hole really goes deep here. This ties into another family here in Arkansas who testified a couple of years ago of 19 Arkansas DHS workers that had taken over $20 million. Okay? And a family member testified and sent one of their family members that was a DHS employee. She was known as the gatekeeper for DHS. And that she testified, and 19 DHS employees went to jail. Now, this was over $20 million that had been funneled out of the system. Within 2 weeks of testifying and all these people went to jail, Child Protective Services came in there and removed 7 of their children, all of their children, out of the home. And they still do not have their kids to this day.
Whose home?
The girl that testified, it's the Davis family here in Arkansas. And they removed, within 2 weeks that they testified and sent all those people to jail, they came in there and said that they were positive for drugs. They were not. And removed all 7 of their children.
So Mrs. Davis was the gatekeeper for DHS. She testified against the DHS.
No, she testified against her sister-in-law that was the gatekeeper of DHS.
Okay, she testified against her sister-in-law, and that got 19 people from DHS arrested for $20 million.
Embezzling over $20 million. Mm-hmm.
And then right after her testimony, which is clearly a conflict of interest because this woman should have been untouchable, DHS, the same corrupt organization, comes in and they remove 7 of her children.
Correct.
All 7 of her children. Okay. Now we got
Now where that ties into is they were so harassed, they had finally hushed. I mean, they just kind of accepted that her and her husband, and they're actually a client of mine, and that's why I'm very familiar with this case. And in November, when I had an event at the Capitol exposing DHS and family advocacy, we had over 49 family victims of Arkansas injustice, Child Protective Services, and seizing kids unconstitutionally it's unreal with these cases. And because the Davis family was there, they decided, because of my willingness to speak out against the corruption in Arkansas, that they would start being vocal again. So they came back trying to fight for their children again and being vocal about, what's happened with their family. We actually interviewed on that day. And within not much longer, one of the social workers that's currently with DHS files a complaint against Mr. Davis, saying that he was terroristic threatening, was the first complaint that was filed. The judge denied it. I have the documentation that can show you where the judge denied it. So then another document was filed that she was harassed by him. So there was a warrant put out for him. But they arrested him on both warrants for terroristic threatening and harassment. They had to pay the bond. I mean, we worked to bond him out, and the bond had to be paid on the terroristic threatening and the harassment charge. Now, this is where it gets interesting. His probation ends next month. But because of the terroristic threatening, guess what? The probation officer comes and picks him up and wants to send him back to prison because the harassment charge does not send him back to jail. The terroristic threatening does. So they then tried to send him back.
They had to make it a terroristic threatening, because if a woman was being stalked, if that man doesn't touch her, they won't even arrest him. So they had to make it a terroristic threat and charge him on that, which is a false trumped-up charge, which the judge has already released, you're saying. And they're trying to take him to jail over something he's already been cleared by.
I have the writing from the judge. Literally. I mean, I have the documentation. And so then when we call, we still don't have him cleared. Now, we have been able to get him released, and because we have raised some hell, and we were able to get that probation hearing rescheduled. But we have a court date this month of trying to get this harassment and the terroristic threatening thing is in part of the system. I literally talked to the woman myself, the warrant woman who put them in the system, and when I said this warrant should have never been served, it clearly says that she was terroristic threatening at like 9:11 a.m. He was at work at Sonic at 9:11 a.m. We have the backup drive in multiple locations where he was at work that day on camera. There's no way he terroristic threatened her on that day at 9:11 a.m.
Michelle, I'm curious. Now, I do speak to some RICO law experts, and I can tell you that you have an incredible lawsuit against the state of Arkansas because you have physical evidence written down in the form of a judge's ruling, which is irrefutable. You have actual camera footage. You have an actual login to his job that show that this charge is impossible for them to then turn around, ignore that, and then charge anyways. This is clearly a RICO case, which would be something that could be settled much, much faster than a typical lawsuit, and it's triple damages because it's absolute. And I would highly recommend you file that, just for the record.
And then we have where they've lost their 7 children. And I'm telling you, this family has been targeted because of this. Now, why that is important is because when the $27 million came missing, we were getting intel back that the gatekeeper, the same operation was still going. It just had changed its clothing, basically, you know. And those were things that Linda Collins Smith was working with us. Now, the $27 million just went up to like around $53 million that is now missing in the state of Arkansas. About maybe 2 or 3 weeks, it may have been 2 months, but it has just currently been reported that it has now jumped up to the $50+ million mark that Arkansas and DHS, Child Protective Services, the money is unaccountable for. And nobody is really saying, oh, well, this is very important. And actually, the lady that is over the system here, when she couldn't find the $27 million, Asa Hutchison gave her a fucking raise. Excuse my language. And this is something that really has made me
angry.
This is, yeah, because you know me. When we talk privately, I say, I'm very careful about that. So I apologize for that to the listeners.
That's okay. It's okay.
I do. I apologize for that. But what I'm telling you is we have clear evidence in the state of Arkansas. We have child trafficking. We have audio. We have proof that there are 2 sets of books running with Child Protective Services in the state of Arkansas. We have proof
wait, now
that...
let's just pause right there. You have proof that there's 2 sets of books for Child Protective Services in Arkansas, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now in this, this is where you track down the alleged missing $27 million, which clearly isn't missing. It's more like it's hidden, correct?
Well, no. So the bigger picture on this is that you think that there's only 57 or 53 million missing on the set of books that you get to see.
Okay.
But there's a second set of books that they're not telling you about. So the set of books that
so you mean to say that the 53 million missing is on the good set of the books, or I mean like the good that's the doctored set.
I call that the tip money. And I laugh when I was laughing at the 27 million and telling the good people that we have in Arkansas and people like her, we were saying, y'all are funny. Yeah, like that's the set of books that y'all have that you let the people of Arkansas see, and that it's that's the tip money. That's not the when the documentation that was done by Freedom of Information Act, and what we found was not millions was missing, and it actually is in the billion-dollar figure.
So where is this money going?
Well, where do you think it's going?
Well, I'm queuing you up to give me a great answer, so you tell me.
We have the wonderful Clinton Foundation in the state of Arkansas, and I told you yesterday that there have been shadow groups and parts of the Clinton Foundation that have been allowed to be set up that did not have to have any correct tax documentation. They were never put in place. And I can tell you that the Clinton Foundation has gotten the most money out of the Republican Party being in office than any other money funneled down. So if you want to think that this was a Democrat issue, that is not true. The Clinton Foundation has been set up, and money that has been given to them on the shadow organizations, and the money that's been given to them has been done under the Republican Party.
So now, does this second set of books, does this, prove that you can show, like, this is where money has been filtered to these shadow organizations?
The second set of books will show you that there are stocks and dividends that have been bought in the state of Arkansas that have no known source of how they were purchased. And on these stocks, the dividends that come back are not going back to the Arkansas taxpayers.
And do they show
if you go in and yes, if you Freedom of Information Act and you know what to ask for, you can find the people that are connected. The person that started the paperwork on the Freedom of Information Act, and they have tried to kill him 15 times already.
Wow. So let me get this right, because I want to make sure this is very clear. So you have the Clinton Foundation has various shadow kind of shell corporations set up without proper documentation. They don't have proper tax ID. They're just kind of there. They're taking money that they cannot account for that is really being filtered from the state of Arkansas to invest in stocks, and then they're taking the dividends that are earned from these stocks, and they're going back to these shell companies, basically. And those shell companies are all associated with the Clinton Foundation, and this can be understood clearly with documentable evidence from the Freedom of Information Act if you know the right questions to ask.
Right. When the original investigation, when the documentation started going in and it was taken to the FBI, the people that were in the good side of it listening were removed and no longer with the FBI that were trying to do something when the original Freedom of Information Act started and the investigation. in this investigation with the stocks and dividends and everything, we were able to also attain audio where there were a motorcycle gang removing CPS children in the state of Arkansas and taking them to Mexican brothels.
So you have actual audio of a motorcycle gang removing children from Child Protective Services, taking them to a brothel to be used as prostitutes in Mexico.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And
that's pretty damning.
And we had been working very hard to get people in numerous agencies, and it has fallen on deaf ears, basically. And so what we were doing was, 100 plus people, plus 100, they gave it to 100 plus people. We were just making sure that our evidence was given to people that if one of us, was taken out, the work doesn't end. And unfortunately, it appears that, someone that was in a senator position that knows things that, that's been in the system, that knew things, was helping with the good guys, helping with us, and was very actively speaking out against DHS. And
now this is Linda Collins Smith you're talking about, right? Not someone else.
Right.
Okay.
And when you have someone that's going to a grand jury, to testify against the Clintons, and you already know that what we've all been working on, and you start questioning, like I said, we have been, we've had agents who, when they were on our side, they're removed. We have flights that come into the state of...
This is a common practice in the FBI, that when FBI agents have not been indoctrinated into, shadow activity that's going on, they are dismissed and moved elsewhere because they're getting in over their heads, which sounds like the case that you're talking about, where you had FBI agents who were actively supporting and investigating this, really investigating it, trying to get to the truth, and then they were removed from the FBI, or they were removed from the area.
Absolutely. And like I said, the person that originally, with the Freedom of Information Act that began this process of taking it and trying to get it exposed, get it helped, he was actually visited, and he was told that he was going to come work for them, or he wasn't going to live. And let's just say that he didn't go work for them, and they have attempted to take him out 15 times.
Now, I'll respect whatever you want to do, but are you keeping this man's name a secret to protect him? Because I would say it's the opposite.
At this point, possibly tomorrow I would have no problem sharing his name or anything, but because of what has happened yesterday, I don't want to put his name out until I speak with him and our connections to make sure that he's okay. But they're going to know who it is. I mean, they know who, the Freedom of Information Act and where the process started. In his work, he found out that there was actually a quota per county to take that you had to take so many children out of your county to receive federal grants. Now, this is something you and I were talking about yesterday privately. And what people do not realize is that this is not just Arkansas, that the federal grant money, you don't get a percentage of that money. You don't get this money if you don't meet the quota the year before. So if your state is told for you to get this funding, this federal funding, you have to meet 100 children. Your state has to take 100 children from families. If you only take 99, you don't get your money the next year. And
so let's piece that together, because that's a really, really big deal. It really shocked me when you told me this. So there are federal grants, and the federal grants fund the DHS, correct, the Department of Human Services, and the Child Protective Services. And in this grant, what is written into the grant as part of the requirements for that grant to be renewed each year, which is just free government money, tax-free government money, for that to go through, that they are required to break up a certain number of families and take away their children.
That's right. That's why I call it a price on life. That's why I always say there's already there's a price on your child. It doesn't matter if the children, and if the state says, if Arkansas's quota is 100 children, it doesn't matter if every family in Arkansas was as perfect as you could be. It would not matter. As long as that system is running the way it is, those children are going to be seized, and every year there's going to be more taken. That is why you do not see in this system the number going down. It's like 300 in the United States. I think the number is around like 333, 300 and something. It's right in the 300 mark a day, and that children are seized from Child Protective Services. Now, I told you yesterday when you and I talked that we also have 2,000 American children who come missing a day. Every 43 seconds, a child in America is reported missing. And then when you plug in the other number, that Child Protective Services takes around 330 plus kids a day from American families. And then the FBI number is that 89% of the children that are currently, 500,000 children right now in this system, do not have true abuse allegations. They shouldn't be there.
So basically, the federal grant requires them to take a certain amount of children. They clearly don't have just cause to do that. According to the FBI, which is saying that 89% of the children held or taken by Child Protective Services, these are false allegations. So the federal grant is reinforcing the continued practice of taking children based on false allegations, essentially.
And that's why you see the exact same pattern. It's the playbook. That's why it's not one state that has the same pattern of taking children, and like you see the fake drug test, you see the fake you know what I mean? Like if it was just one corrupt area, it would be like if I was stealing something with you and I would be doing it, right? But when you see that every single state has the exact same playbook, it's not just a state doing it, because I'm telling you, every state, the playbook is the same lies, the same war on American families taking American children. And in the Freedom Information Act, the quota for Arkansas on these children was responsible for 56% of the salaries of DHS employees.
Wow. So the federal grant, so all of the people that are actually working for Child Protective Services, or a majority of them, more than 50% of them, are actually being funded and motivated to keep their jobs based on creating false accusations.
Well, and the other thing is, now that's money you can track. You do know that when if you're the Child Protective Service, like a worker so if you remove a child from an American home and that child is adopted out, not returned to the family, they get a bonus. And the bonus can be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. And it's cash money.
I know from the adoption business that one of the biggest scams running is that you will have the optics will look like a well-to-do white family of some sort that will come and adopt the child. The child thinks they're going to some decent home, and they literally take them directly to auctions where kids are sold.
Right. 88% of the children that are in sex trafficking have been products in the system of foster care, Child Protective Services. So 88% of the children that is in sex trafficking are the children that have been in the Child Protective Services. So when you have those numbers in place, between me and I think that the more people become awake, why is that system in place? It should not be running. It is being running, and like we've talked about, and you and I, is the job here is to take the children, break the children, and make them robots, to make money off of them, to make them a commodity, and this ties into DHS is what got Senator Nancy Schaefer killed, who was a huge advocate with DHS. And I can absolutely tell you that what got her killed had involved with Hillary Clinton. And
so this is really, CPS is not Child Protective Services. It is Child Pedophile Services. This is a high-end, government-funded organization that is literally being utilized to take American children from their families and shopped out to be trafficked and utilized for various deviant activities.
And they know it.
Insane. And they know it.
They know
and not only that, but there's an active coup to cover this up, or active whatever operation going on right now. That clearly the FBI is complicit in, because they're firing agents that are advocating to investigate these things. So we don't even have, these agencies aren't even effective at this point. Even clearly we're seeing this played out in the mainstream media right now, as the Mueller investigation is proving out to be, a useless waste of our money. And the same thing is happening on a much more personal level, on the state level, on the county level, where they are literally being funded and their salaries being paid to come in and take our children.
Absolutely. There's a quota.
That is
there's a price
tragedy.
tag. And that is why, when people have said to me over and over, why will you just not shut up about the children, and not, sometimes they want me to take another fight on, and I'm like, well, it always was going to tie right back into this. And they're our future. There's going to be the people who are taking care of us, Tank, when we're old. And so, do you want someone who has been in the system, beaten down, sold, be the person that's making our laws 20, 30 years down the road? And this is I have a case here, another client, in Arkansas that her children were trafficked out of Arkansas and sent to Illinois, and they've removed her name from the birth certificate, and she had to even use Senator McCain at that time. She kidnapped her kids to prove that they were her kids in Illinois. But she was charged from Arkansas. She spent 6 years in prison. The maximum that they should have been able to hold her was for 3 years. There was a case in the Supreme Court right now. She won, and Arkansas refused to pay it, appealed it. Appeals court came back and said, no, you owe her on this. Arkansas came back and said, no, we're not paying this. And right now we're at any time could be getting a ruling back from the Supreme Court. It's right at a $40 million lawsuit. And the tragedy with her was, in that she's very ill at the time, and we were not able to get help from the Arkansas Health Department, the Missouri Department of Health Department, and we currently have her in another state getting help, but it has been unreal. Like I said, in Arkansas, I could easily, if you right now said to me, I need you to call in families right now to tell me that these things are true, right now I could give you over 120 people that we could call right now who would give you almost the same story of what's happened to them in Arkansas, and they're still fighting for their children, or their children aged out, or they went to prison, they had fake drug tests, they are fighting, they had grandparent rights, and they took the child, and they've lost their children. Like guardianship, and it's not even being seen in court. Had a motion, an emergency motion, and in an emergency, you're supposed to get an answer within 3 days. They never allowed that emergency motion to go through. It was unreal. They literally, I have on audio where she was in there trying to get them to file something for her, and they were refusing to file it. And she asked the court, the circuit court, who files your stuff, what is your oath? I wanted her to repeat her oath. I said, we wanted a copy of her oath, and you know why I wanted that. Because she told her she was filing for per se, and she was telling her that she couldn't file that way, that she had to have an attorney. That's what they were trying to say. And so she was in there, and our documentation was correct. It was written by a paralegal and a legal team. They just didn't know that. And out of another state. And so she asked for a copy of her oath, and she said that we don't do that here. We don't have oaths. We had it on audio.
They don't have oaths. Well, they
that's what
sure
tell her.
Hell aren't part of the government then, because everybody who's employed by the government takes an oath. That's ridiculous.
Exactly right. And that family lost their child.
You're really talking about, on a grander scale, you're talking about a foreign agency essentially operating as a government agency fraudulently with employees that aren't even aware of their oath of office. Clearly, they're not enforcing constitutional law. They violate the law as needed to answer to their, perceived masters. I would imagine that appear to be connected to the Clintons and other, people in that world, I guess.
Right, and then you have a direct connection, like you said, with the Clintons, and Deep State is absolutely, here, and we just, we're fighting a war that it's not easy. It's not easy. My work with veteran suicide, and I've said that I think stopping a veteran from committing suicide was easier than the CPS fight, because there are so many families that have lost their children, and it's injustice. If they've not taken your child, injustice to one is injustice to all of us. And if they've not taken your child yet, it doesn't mean they're not going to be knocking on your door tonight or coming through it. And I'm telling you, this war is only going to get bigger. And we're really at the point where we've got to get more people on deck who are, the line has been drawn at this point with all of us, and especially after last night, the line was drawn for us, and we said, okay, this is war for us, because they're destroying us here, and they're taking the children, they're selling them. You've got all this taxpayer money. We're taxed like crazy. There's 2 sets of books. The corruption is unreal. I mean, you and I could have an 8-hour show on a day on the corruption and where it all leads to. It's absolutely unreal. And it all ties into other states.
All right, Michele, with that being said, we know that the average attention span of people is pretty short. I know you and I have more to talk about, and if we have to do 6 more shows today, we will. I'm going to close this off right now just because I want to keep this compact, because I think what you had to say today is so powerful. I really need to make sure this goes out to everybody listening now and in the future. I am asking you, please, share this with everyone. To all of my veterans out there, I want to remind you, and I'm really advocating for this, you are needed now more than you have ever been needed. I call it civilian active duty. It is in the heart of our veterans that the American people definitely are loved and protected. And I really want to encourage every veteran out there, please get involved. We are forming and gathering people together. If you are feeling down and without purpose, we need you right now. We need you because we need men and women who have the courage to stand up to a monster that is going after our children, that is going after the hearts of the American, and really trying to break our hearts and break our soul and make it so we just give up and run away. We cannot do that. Michele, before we go, is there any closing words you want to drop?
I just want to say for me that our prayers and our deepest condolences to Linda's 2 children and her family and the people that absolutely love her, and that we've lost an angel in our state, and she is going to be greatly missed, and that they're in our prayers, and but we promise that the work will not stop, and that we're going to continue. And but I send today my prayers, my love. Like I said, I've not been to bed. We have literally worked all night, from people all the way, actually in another country, helping and pulling all of our intel, all of our information together, and we will get answers. And I thank you for today and this platform, And I just say that go rest in peace. She was a great Christian, and we got it from here. We don't have a choice. We've got it from here.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay, so Michele, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. It does not fall on deaf ears here at the Speak Project. I want to make it very clear that at the Speak Project, we are dedicated to changing the world. We recognize that we want to build a place, we want to build a new creation, a world that is built by the people, for the people, and of the people. We want a world that is inspired by love. It is challenged to be the best version that is possible, that we are all challenging ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. This is possible, but we have got to come together, and we have got to understand the evil that has been perpetuated against us and continues to be perpetuated against us. Come and get on board and start planning a new world. Go to GoCamelot.com, go to SpeakProject.net, go to CreateChange.today. Get involved and get in this fight, because your life is on the line just as much as any of us. We cannot back down. So no retreat, no surrender. Have a great day.